Let's go to Ted O'Brien, the Shadow Climate Change and Energy Minister, joins us from Maroochydore. A question without notice, Ted O'Brien. Honestly, the ABC, they can't get away with this sort of nonsense and then putting their hand out for a 23% pay rise, can they?
Well, good evening, Chris. And I think we all know what side the ABC fall on in too many programs. They're not all bad. But I think we all know those that are bleedingly, obviously, from the left.
Well, I tell you what, you guys are in power for about nearly a decade and you did nothing about it again. So let's move on. There's been too much said about super. We'll come back to it again. But there's one particular aspect I want to highlight with you. Let's put a graphic up here that comes from the Financial Services Council. And this shows that this $3 million starting point for the new doubled tax that Labor have brought in, because it's not indexed, this shows what it will do to younger people now. If you're 55, that's going to kick in by the time you retire at 2.3 million. Not such a big figure suddenly. If you're 25 now, it's going to be just over $1 million. If you're 30 now, it's going to be kicking in at 1.264 million. So the impact of this is going to be felt by everybody eventually, isn't it, Ted?
Chris, it will. And the younger you are, the more it's going to hurt you. And this is why Labor has kept it a secret. This is why they break promises and why they immediately now, they shut down the national conversation. They want to legislate it. They are effectively going to legislate a lie. And that lie is going to have a dramatic impact, especially on younger Australians as they accumulate super for their retirement.
Well, at the very least, you'd have to index a change like this or come back to it and upscale the figure every year or two.
Well, you'd think so, but we're talking about the Labor Party, Chris. They're not good at the economics, which is why they're trying to turn it into a class warfare debate, why they're trying to bring identity politics into the debate. They don't want to talk about the economics of this thing. It's the economics that are going to prove the livelihood of future Australian generations, and they're going to be crippling them. And that's what it's all about. But they don't want to argue that. They don't want to deal with the economics because they're not from the real world. None of them have been. The Prime Minister, Treasurer, even my counterpart, Chris Bowen, none of them have business experience, not one day.
No,
they are lifetime political hacks.
Yeah, I went through that at the start. It's quite astonishing, really. Now, let's talk about economics and energy because the smarter minds in the Labor Party, people like the South Australian Premier Peter Malinauskas, say they've got no ideological objection to the only reliable zero emissions form of energy, that is nuclear energy. They just say it falls over on economics. Now, no one seems to question the economics of renewables. They're happy to spend hundreds of billions on that and destroy our national grid. But they use economics to diss nuclear. Now, I've been reading some articles lately about what's happening in the rest of the world. And I know you've been to Japan recently. These small modular reactors, which have the potential to be easy to install, safe and cheap to operate, are becoming increasingly practical and affordable around the world as we speak, aren't they?
Chris, they are, and the economics stack up, which is why these countries are doing it. You know, if there's a big difference from us in the United States, Canada and Japan, I've been to those three countries just recently, it's pragmatism. They are looking at this technology and they are taking an all-of-the-above approach. And they are saying that nuclear energy stacks up economically. And the game has totally changed. I mean, you mentioned small modular reactors. This is what the new game is about. This is about the next generation of zero emissions new nuclear energy. Completely different from the past. The economics stack up. And these play in the same grid as renewables. So, you know, as renewables come in the grid, they've got to be firmed up. And these new nuclear plants can ramp up, ramp down, and work in that sort of an environment. But for some,
you won't need as many renewables.
The Labor Party won't deal with it.
You won't have the landscape and the shorelines dotted with wind turbines and farmland right across the country having 10,000 kilometres of transmission lines across it.
Well, exactly. And I mean, if you look at Wyoming, right, and Wyoming, which is a state in the US, they are converting coal-fired power stations into nuclear power stations. And why are they doing that? Because they know that they can leverage existing infrastructure, existing transmission lines. And by the way, Chris, something fascinating in Wyoming. Once they made this announcement, this was a state that has had no nuclear energy. They've been coal reliant. They had communities putting their hands up, bidding, saying, please, pick us, we want nuclear energy. But here we have the Prime Minister running this campaign trying to scare people. That is going to hurt the communities. It's
happening. It's the future. It's just a matter of when, and hopefully the coalition can push it along. Thanks for joining us, Ted. Appreciate your time.
Thanks very much, Chris. All the best.
Ted O'Brien there. The world is going nuclear. The world wants zero emissions energy. It's going nuclear. The sooner we get on board, the better for our country and our economy and our kids' future.